Well, I do love seeing all you out there. And as I told first service, the children sometimes are a great bait to get more people in the pews. So again, thank you for being here. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Bill Berger, although I go by a great many other names. I am Mr. Berger to the kids in Sunday school and to the neighborhood kids where I do movie night. I am also called Leslie's husband, or sometimes the loud tenor over there. Or if you'd like to play fill in the blank, you can use Aubrey, Samantha, or Claire's dad. At work, I am the Burger Man. At the Renaissance Fair, I am Scully McQuillan, and you just might meet Tobias McQuillan at this year's trunk or treat. While it may appear that I suffer from multiple personality disorder, I would like to assure you that this is just a small side effect of being passionate about being committed into so many different activities. I'm standing up here for a reason. One of the things I like about Frank's sermons is that he loves to give us homework. And I am going to be bold enough to give you homework myself. I have a question for each of you to ponder, and I am in no way looking for an answer today. I'd like to know why there is a church at 190 South Fairmont. Surely it should exist for some reason more than to just pay my wife a paycheck. There must be lots of reasons why people come to this church or any other church, and I just suspect that our reason is a little unusual. You see, the Bergers came to Canyon Hills Presbyterian Church for the money. Leslie was the choir director for a Catholic church across town, and one of her colleagues was acting as the interim conductor for Canyon Hills. When that colleague followed a job opportunity back east, she recommended Leslie as her permanent replacement. Back then, Presbyterians were paying better than Catholics. Although I had never heard the label before when I was growing up, it seems that I grew up in a deist home. Not an atheist, nor really even an agnostic, although that was the label most frequently used to describe the way I believed. I was an interested observer in the universe in which I lived. I love science. I still do. I had many friends of many different religions, and I still do. This was difficult sometimes because my religious friends seemed to only agree on two things. They liked me, and they disliked each other. Perhaps fittingly, one of my core beliefs comes from a 1990s comedy called Joe versus the Volcano, instead of one of my friend's religious texts. I heard truth in what Meg Ryan's character said. Paraphrased, it reads something like this: nearly the whole world is asleep. Everyone you know, everyone you see, and everyone you talk to. Only a very few people are really awake, and they live in a state of constant and total amazement. When Leslie and I arrived at Canyon Hills, I attended services here the way I'd attended at any other house of worship, as a respectful, interested spectator. No more than that, I sat in a pew. I didn't even sing in Leslie's choir. One Sunday, shortly after we arrived, Lisa announced the formation of the first adult Mexico mission trip. This sounded like a fun adventure. So I signed up, and I went down to Mexico in the company of complete strangers. There are a lot of things I could tell you about that first adult Mexico mission trip, and some of them might even be true. But here is my most vivid memory of that first trip. I am dragging myself and my equipment out of what we had dubbed the Indiana Jones Trail. I am thoroughly spent, consumed by nothing more than moving one foot in front of the other. My arms are burning with fatigue. I have no idea how I'm going to get the equipment I'm carrying all the way back to our base camp. As I clear the edge of the ravine and step onto more level ground, I am confronted by a couple of aggressive local teens. In broken English, they demand to know what I am doing in their country. They interrogate me as to how I know the family I am building the home for and how much exactly I am being paid. They clearly do not believe me when I tell them that I met the family for the first time that day. If you do not know them, they insist, why on earth are you here? You know how time slows down sometimes when you're under great stress? I desperately asked myself those same questions. Why am I here? I am astounded when I hear the answer, and even more surprised that it is coming from my own exhausted voice, clearly and deliberately saying the words out loud, because this is where God wants me to be. Immediately, the teens change their demeanor. They look at each other, nod, and smile. Missionary, they say to each other. This is something they can understand. They understood my situation better than I did. The boys helped me to carry my burdens back to Futuro del Oro. They leave me at the gate with well wishes for much safety and success. And let me tell you, I slept very well that night. I had arrived in Mexico as a tourist, a spectator among strangers. But I was now a missionary with a church. I want to make this point completely clear. I am not someone who attends Canyon Hills Presbyterian Church. This is my church. Whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not, you are all sitting in my church. I believe that a key difference between that sleeping majority that I mentioned before and those who truly are awake is that the awake participate in life. They are not just amazed by the things that are going on around them. They invest themselves in their lives like they own them. I invest my time, talents, and treasure in my church to the best of my abilities. In better economic times, my kids enjoyed some pretty elaborate birthday celebrations. In today's reality, they are comparatively modest affairs. But my point is this, that no matter how lean the times got, I never once failed to celebrate any of my kids' birthdays. Nor have I ever failed to invest in my church. Getting back to the question I asked you all earlier, more than 30 years ago, Helen Harwell famously stated that there needed to be a Presbyterian church in the canyon. And with the expenditure of a great deal of time, talent, and treasure, CHPC was born. Today, I had the nerve to ask why it's still here. Back then, there were no Presbyterian churches in the area, but this is simply no longer true today. I suggested that this church should exist for some greater reason than to provide my wife with a paycheck. But to be brutally honest, it was that little part-time check that got me here in the first place. And that decision had a major impact on my life. Those are two reasons. From about 30 years ago and about 20 years ago. And I'm sure if I wanted to continue the trend line, I could ask you for reasons why the church was important to be here 10 years ago. But that's not the question. I would like to know why the church is here today. And when we figure that part out, whatever it may be, I bet it will still require the talents, time, and treasures of the members of this church, of my church. Whatever it is, count me in.